Okay, I'd like to call to order the special call meeting of the Bowling Green Board of Commissioners for November 17th, 2020. Now call the roll, please. We'll have Perigin.
Here.
Beasley Brown.
Here.
Denning. And Nash is absent tonight. So the first thing to do is to have city manager comments. Do you have any items, Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. Mayor, I'd like to ask Ashley, we need a closed session tonight. I'd like to ask Ashley to read the reason.
Yeah.
Pursuant to KRS 61-810-1C, for the purpose of discussions of pending litigation against the city.
Motions by Wilkerson and second by Perigin. I'll call the roll. Perigin.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Denning.
Yes.
And Wilkerson is yes. So that will come at the end of the meeting. Are there any other comments, Mr. Meisel?
That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, approval of minutes from the special meeting on October 20th, 2020. Motion by Wilkerson and second by Perigin. Are there any deletions, additions, or corrections? I'll call the roll. Perigin.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Denning.
Yes.
Wilkerson is yes. First item is Municipal Order 2020-172. Municipal order approving the transfer of Brian Chambers to the position of fire captain and promotion of Shannon Pardue to the position of assistant fire chief in the fire department. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Meisel.
The current assistant chief of training, Brian Chambers, requested a voluntary transfer back over to supervision. Chief Colson agreed to that and has requested and selected Captain Shannon Pardue to fill the position of the assistant for training. And this is just a swap out in the fire department. Captain Pardue has been with us since, that's a typo, since 2003, I believe. He's been a fire apparatus operator since 2010, captain in 2016, and transferred to the suppression. He was captain of training, and they transferred back to suppression division, and now he's going to transfer back to training as assistant fire chief of training. So that's all that is. Would request your approval for this.
Any comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Denning.
Yes.
Wilkerson is yes. Next is Municipal Order 2020-173. Municipal order approving the probationary appointment of Chase Shyrock to the position of System Analyst 1 in the Information Technology Department. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Meisel.
A few months ago, we moved Stephen Epley, our former System Analyst 1, to the Systems Engineer position, which created a vacancy in the Systems Analyst 1. We went out to look for applicants. We received 44 and selected 27 for review, 6 interviews. And Mr. Chase Shyrock was selected as the finalist. Chase comes to us from WKU as a system analyst, system administrator. Been there since 2017. He also worked at Fruit of the Loom in the IT department. He's a Greenwood grad and also has a bachelor's degree from Southern Illinois University. And we request approval to offer Chase Shyrock the position of System Analyst 1 in IT.
Are there any comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Denning. And Wilkerson is yes. Municipal Order 2020-174. Municipal order authorizing and accepting bid number 2021-17 for sidewalk hazard removal and repair from Just Construction Incorporated of Columbia, Kentucky, in the amount of $80,450. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Meisel.
The Public Works Department has gone out and identified some sidewalks that need repair. We went out for bid and received 3 bids to do this work. We went out and inspected roughly 23 miles of sidewalk in 2 zones of the city. And there were approximately 600 square yards of sidewalk that needed work. Went out for bid, and I think it's Gist Construction was the lowest bid at $80,450, recommending them for approval to do this work. Greg is here and can answer any detailed questions you might have, but there's a detailed map of the area we're looking at in your packets.
Any comments or questions? Joe?
I got it.
Greg, is this company owned by local people here in Bowling Green?
No, they're out of Columbia area, I think, Joe. So they're not local.
They are not a subsidiary of Shamrock over there?
I don't think they are. I do, however, think that on this particular contract, they've got a subcontractor who is local that will help them do the work. So again, they're not local though, Joe, and they're not, as far as I know, they're not Shamrock.
Okay, thank you.
Sue?
Yeah, hey, Greg, is this part of that overall partnership with the state where we're going to be taking the maintenance of these sidewalks that traditionally belong to them?
No, that's later on the agenda. We have the maintenance and traffic agreement, but this is not that larger contract to reconstruct sidewalks along state roads.
Okay, thank you.
This is our annual sidewalk rehabilitation that we usually do.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions?
I'm glad to see we're getting it in. Great.
I'll call the roll. Perigin.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Denning. And Wilkerson is yes. Municipal Order 2020-175. Municipal Order authorizing and accepting bid 2021-14 for fitness equipment for the fire department from various vendors in the amount not to exceed $99,860.50. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Mizel.
So if you guys can remember a couple of meetings ago, we brought forth to you the Assistance to Firefighters grant that Nick Cook helped the fire department, and that was for $99,860. We are using that money tonight, recommending that we purchase some fitness equipment. Most of the fitness equipment in the fire department is at least 15 years old or more that was handed down from Parks and Rec years ago. So $90,782.27 will be covered on this purchase by the grant that we received, and the other $9,000 will be coming from the Fire Improvement Fund. In your packets, you'll see that there were 5 bidders, and we are awarding a little bit to 4 of the 5 of the items that were bid out, and those are all listed in your packet. But again, 10% of this will be covered by Fire Improvement Fund, with the other 90% all covered by the Assistance to Firefighter grant.
Any other comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Denning. Wilkerson is yes. Municipal Order 2020-176. Municipal Order accepting the City of Bowling Green, Kentucky Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the period ended June 30, 2020, as prepared by the Department of Finance and audited by MCM CPAs and Advisors, LLP. Motion by Wilkerson and second by Perigin. Mr. Mizel.
This is our annual external audit that we receive. I'd like to thank Katie and her staff, especially Aaron Ballou and Sean Weeks, for all of their work on this. This is about a 5 or 6 month project. As you can see, it's lengthy and it's very detailed and takes a lot of expertise and talent to pull important. We have all that in-house. I'd like to brag about that, and that we can do this in-house. And Katie and her team do a great job on this each year. Also like to thank our grants division, our housing division up on the Hill. They participate with this audit as well, with the federal grants that we receive, and making sure we comply with every requirement of federal grants. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brian Denning. He's a chairman of our audit committee, and we have met with them. And Brian, I'll let you take it from here.
I am here as the chairman of the audit committee. On November the 9th, our committee had the opportunity to review the comprehensive annual financial report known as the CAFR for the period ending June 30, 2020. The presentation was made by the independent auditing firm of MCM CPAs. After the presentation and questions from our committee, Resolution 2020-1 was approved. And thus, this was a recommendation for approval from our committee of the CAFR to the Board of Commissioners. It was a clean audit with no misstatements or corrections needed. And the only point of emphasis that was brought up by the auditor that was discussed by our committee was that the total liabilities due, there was an increase in the total liabilities due to the increase in pension liability. And due to the nature of the pension program, this liability will continue to increase in future years.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question for Mr. Denning? I do want to take a moment on behalf of the city and thank you and the rest of the members of the internal audit committee who gives us those outside set of eyes from a professional standpoint to view what the city does and can make recommendations through our internal audit program. I know it's a lot of work to show up and do something for which you don't get paid, but we appreciate your dedication to the city to make sure that we're financially sound. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
I give my hand.
And Joe Denning
Thank you.
served on that committee too.
Yeah, and I will say that I will speak for the whole committee that we've enjoyed working with Joe and hate that we're not going to get to work with him in the future.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it. And a lot of people don't know that we are first cousins. And thank you, buddy. I appreciate those kind words. Thank you.
Well, you will be missed on our committee.
Thank you very much.
Dana, did you have a question?
I just wanted to echo your words, Mayor, just thanking everyone from the staff, Katie and Brandon, and everyone who worked on it, as well as the committee. It truly is such an incredible, I'm in awe when I read this audit, knowing how much work has gone into making sure that we are using our taxpayer dollars wisely and that we are being transparent about that. And so just congratulations on your clean audit, and thank you everyone for all of your hard work and just for everything that you all do to make sure that we're taking good care and being good stewards of our city. So just thanks everyone so much.
If Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if we didn't have the leadership of Deborah, I don't know where we would be. She does an outstanding job. She watches how much water we drink at a meeting, anything that she can.
Go, Deborah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah.
But she's my buddy. She has taken care of us, and I'm going to miss working with her.
Jeff, did you or Katie have anything else to add?
Like
Okay.
I've said before, Mayor, sort of the accreditation that the finance works toward. We'll be submitting this to the Government Finance Officers Association for our certificate of achievement very soon, and hopefully to hear back from that in the spring. So that's kind of the finance department's badge of honor or stamp of approval, I guess, for the job that they do.
The public understands that this was a clean audit. There was no findings for us to have to deal with, so again, thanks to all of our staff to get us there. I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning, and Wilkerson is yes. Next is Municipal Order 2020-177, municipal order authorizing the acceptance of a grant from U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance to the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program in the amount of $21,675. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Mizel.
This is just more money to buy a bulletproof vest. We can get 50% match on this grant. So basically we can buy roughly 51 vests for about $43,000 and only have to spend $21,675 of our own money. So we are just requesting your approval to move forward on this.
All right, any comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning,
Yes.
Wilkerson is yes. Next is Municipal Order 2020-178. Municipal order authorizing the submission of application through the Kentucky Fire Commission Thermal Imaging Camera Grant Program in an amount up to $3,200 for the fire department. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Mizel.
This one here is a grant we kind of came up on a couple years ago for our thermal imaging equipment. We can get $3,200 from the Kentucky Fire Commission for thermal imaging cameras to be able to see through smoke and darkness. And so this is also a 50% match, so we can get $3,200 and buy roughly $6,400 worth of thermal imaging equipment. Like I said, helps them see through smoke, monitor fire spread, visualize plan of attack, and locate even victims in fire. So this is very critical equipment, and we get it at pretty much half cost with the grant. So recommend your approval for this one as well.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning, Wilkerson is yes. Next is first reading, non-binding for the ordinance number 2020-34, ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning tracts of land containing 1.45 acres from general business to RS1A single-family residential to highway business located at 1218 and 1220 Broadway Avenue and 0 Covington Street, presently owned by Speedway LLC, care of Robert Sweet of McBride, Dale, Clarion. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. First, the process that we'll go through tonight is the same that we've always used when someone has a question. Generally, we just simply vote on the record. Tonight, we've had a couple of questions, so we'll be voting on the record, but we'll allow those who made presentations at the Planning Commission to make comments, summarizing their comments. We can't accept new evidence or new testimony. So first thing we'll do is, Mr. Peterson, do you have anything to add before we begin our discussion? Chairman of, or the Director of the Planning Commission. You're on mute, but I presume you said no. All right. Next up is we'll come to the people who are requesting the rezoning, which is Robert Sweet of McBride, Dale, Clarion. Let's see, Mr. Sweet was there. Are you on our, yes, you're in the.
How are you doing this evening?
Doing fine, sir.
So as you stated, we are here requesting some rezoning from GB and RS1A to HB. This is at the intersection of Broadway Avenue and Covington Street. We are here. I've got Jared Cron with me. I've also got two folks from Speedway Operations with us available to answer questions, and look forward to your approval.
Okay, thank you. We won't be able to go to anyone who is there for questions that wasn't there that testified at the meeting. but I appreciate you having them available. They may be able to give you advice if somebody had a question for you
Sure.
at that time.
Is it,
Sue,
can a
did you-
commissioner ask a question?
Yes, if you don't mind, let me get to
Sure.
the one person we have
Absolutely.
online.
Absolutely.
Paula Borland, who did speak at the meeting and is asked to speak tonight. Ms. Borland, I don't know which access you are, but if you're there, you have time to bring to our attention anything that you brought that evening to the floor of the Planning Commission.
Mayor, I do not see her on the list. She is not on the call.
Not on the call. Okay. Okay, Sue, let's go back to you. You had a question.
Well, I really just would like to clarification from Mr. Sweet as to, you know, what they're doing. What kinds of, I know you had some feedback at the meeting from the folks that live in the area. And based on that feedback, what was your redesign or concessions, or what are your plans to not, you know, to keep down the neighborhood changes?
That's a good question. And so really what Speedway has is they currently own a facility out there now. They have purchased a couple additional properties, one at 1220, the other one at 1117 Covington, to basically tear down all those structures and redevelop their site. The feedback that we heard from the neighborhood, and I keep looking over to the side as I got my site plan up, is basically the residential property, the R1SA property, is basically going to be used as a buffer yard. And we will have some fencing back there. We do propose trees. We have a little bit of parking back there for our employees. Other than that, that lot is going to be used as a safeguard for the neighborhood. We're using it strictly as screening. And, you know, again, our development plan, our concept plan shows that. We're not saying, hey, we're going to do this and then turn around and do something else. That's what we show. That's what we plan to do. That is the reasoning why we bought that lot, or why Speedway bought that lot, I should say, to use that for the screening and buffering of the neighborhood.
Do you plan to leave that as green space?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so no dumpsters and all that kind of a thing?
No, the only thing that would be in there would be a few parking spaces again, but those would be designed for employees. I don't even think we are proposing a lighting pole back on that lot. I think everything is either going to be a fence, some form of landscaping, tree planting, and a little bit of parking.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, you had a question?
Yes, sir. Couple of three, bear with me. I'm looking at the aerial map here showing the yellow property line. You bought two houses on the backside of the building now?
Just one.
Okay. I thought you said two.
Well, we bought the adjoining car lot, or we had that under contract, or that's been purchased. That's to the, well, let me get my directions here. That's to the north.
I understand.
Then the house on Covington that's immediately adjacent to our property, that was purchased by Speedway as well.
Yes, I understand. Now, I guess my question and our concern, and I'm kind of like just asked a few minutes ago, as I look at your property line now, that includes where the house was on Covington, plan on having that as green space. Now, you plan on doing where the car lot is at to where you to take the property on Covington. It's going to be done there.
So the property in Covington would be the buffer
No.
yard.
No, the property where the car lot's at, what are your plans for it?
So that would be part of the actual lot expansion. So we would have our building, tanks, a portion of our canopy, and our dumpster enclosure on that property, as well as some parking, landscaping, and green space. Eventually, these lots will all be consolidated into one parcel.
Well, my concern is the encroachment that has already taken place on the lot that you have that is going to be a buffer. I have no problem with things that are taking place on Broadway or Scottsville Road with the frontage. I do have a problem as to when, and I realize before I even say it, it's going to be left up to another commission to make a decision as to whether or not we as a city will continue to let encroachment take place, neighborhoods such as the Covington Street area. No problem with that.
So are you concerned about the spacing of it, the setback of the building?
No, I'm not concerned about your setback of the building. I'm just concerned about where your property line is at now on the back side that includes the house that you bought. In other words, your property line now goes back to the next house property line.
Mm-hmm.
Going
So we've got about 16 feet at our closest point where our parking would be located. And I believe per the requirements, we are, and one other thing I'll add in here. So at our closest point of where the proposed building is about 40 feet. There is a requirement that we are set back 40, we have to provide 40 feet of separation from the building to the property line. Which we meet, we're at 41 at our closest point. The parking area is about 16 feet. I believe that setback is only required to be about 15 feet. And again, that's at the closest point. The majority of that lot is being used, the housing lot is being used as a buffer yard. So we have pretty much where their existing garage, the neighboring existing garage would be, that would be about the closest point. Everything else is pulled away from that property line. Again, as you get closer to Covington Street, we're about 75 feet away with either building or pavement from that adjoining property. The property itself is 49 feet. So if that gives you some kind of buffer, I mean, we're basically putting in a 49-foot buffer with trees and a 6-foot fence on that property to bolster screening. There's also a little bit of a grade separation, which will actually play to the neighbor's favor. I believe it sits a little bit higher on the back side of that property. So on what would that be, the western side of that property, close as you get into the neighborhood. There is a little bit of a grade separation there. So that will also provide some additional, let's say, height screening, if you will, in that area.
down at the corner of Covington and Broadway, where you have that little corner area there, what is going to take place there? Just buffer trees and shrub?
So at the corner of Covington and Broadway, we are proposing a sign. And I would like to state, at our planning commission meeting, we were requesting a waiver or a variance to allow a larger sign. That was withdrawn as part of this project. So we are going to put a new freestanding sign up. We are closing 3 driveways, I believe it is. I think there's 6 total, and we're closing, actually, I think there's 5 total, and we're closing 3. So that will be green space along Broadway and along Covington.
You still don't have ingress and egress here on Covington coming out towards the American Bank? You still gonna have that?
That is correct. So we currently have 2 driveways now that are placed on either side of that opposing driveway. We're going to close both of those and create one driveway that aligns with the bank. This is a, let's say, a traffic management solution to a problem. Because you have 2 curb cuts, you have traffic that has the ability to go both ways. Now we are channeling that with one driveway that's 35 feet. And it aligns to make the site safer.
Are you going to have there on Covington Street going towards that ingress and egress? Are they only going to be able to turn right?
Turn right coming into the store, or turn right coming out of the store?
Right, coming back towards Broadway out of the store.
So they'll be able to make full movements coming in and out of that store, just as they operate today.
It appears that there is a problem already there today as far as traffic. First of all, Covington Street traffic coming into Broadway has to wait in order to make a turn going towards downtown on Broadway. And traffic gets lined up to where your people cannot even come out of the ingress and egress now. So you're saying you're not going to put more traffic out there?
We're actually gonna filter it down to one driveway. So right now there are 2 driveways that allow full movement. So both rights and lefts in and out of that driveway. What we plan to do is align those driveways so it will align with the opposing driveway across the street, which will then allow for perhaps a safer traffic movement. Because those driveways are aligned, you're not playing a guessing game with the opposing bank.
I'm not very sharp when it comes to traffic movement, and I leave that to my friend Mr. Peterson, but I drive through there every day just about, and I don't see how people are going to continue to try to get out on the Covington Street side.
The other thing to add to this too is that we have a secondary driveway on Broadway that we've shifted all the way back from the intersection to help facilitate the traffic movement. With that, we're also closing basically both of the driveways currently operated by Speedway on Broadway and shifting it as far north as we can to provide as much separation. So both of these plans, or this plan, is going to eliminate at least 2 driveways on Broadway and 2 driveways on Covington.
You're getting me a little confused when you say 2 driveways on Covington. You only have.
No, there's 3 driveways on Covington now. There's a driveway associated with the former house. There's 2 driveways associated with Speedway. We're going to close 2 of those and align the 3rd one with the bank across the street to make for safer and better ingress and egress, we feel.
Okay, I wasn't counting whether you bought the house. I was only talking about the one down by the bank, that interest. Um, of course, when the house was in it, people lived in the house. You couldn't count very much traffic coming out of there into Covington as it is with your property and that one entrance that we are talking about. But anyhow, if I have any other questions, Mayor, I'll ask, but I have some concern about the encroachment into this neighborhood. And as a city commission, another city commission, hopefully will make decisions that is best for our neighborhoods, and of course work with commercial entities to do what they feel they need to do based on the laws that we have. But I am certainly not for creating any more problem than what we have. And this light at Broadway and Covington is a busy light. My concern is that we're not moving enough traffic through that light from the Covington Street side out, even having more traffic directed to come out of this property onto Covington. I realize that there are ingress and egress over here on Broadway, but the traffic there can get out because when the stoplight has red on the Scottsville Road side, it gives traffic on the front part of the lot an opportunity to get out. While over here on Covington, the red light backs up 2 lanes with 2 ingress and egresses coming into a 3-lane road.
You finished,
That's
Joe?
all I've got right now.
All right. Sue, did you have something else?
I'm sorry, I was muted. I was hoping to hear from Ben. I've had several concerns and calls on this project from the Covington neighborhood, and you know we do not want to impact our neighborhoods. That's for sure. I feel better with the green space, with the almost 50 feet of green space, and that's going to remain green space and trees and fences and all that I'm hearing. But I'm hoping to get Ben, because I did get a call today from a concerned citizen that didn't even know there was a planning commission meeting. So Ben, can you walk through, and I know this is redundant for you, I know that, but it's not redundant for the neighbors and it's not redundant for the citizens, that you can go through what the process is, and if you're exceeding any of the processes in your office, to make sure that people are informed, and how you went about informing folks.
Sure. So the state law requires certain things for signage, for example, on the property, which there were 2 signs and 2, maybe even 3 signs in this case. Advertising the rezoning, saying what it's zoned from, zone to, and then how to participate in that meeting. We also publish it in the legal notice section of the newspaper as required by law. Of course, understand not many people read that, and much less the legal notice section, but that is the state requirement nonetheless. Then we also send letters to both adjacent property owners and any additional property owners within 200 feet of that rezoning boundary. Which is above and beyond what the state requirement is. Then we also post post everything on our website as soon as it's, we're sure that we're actually going to have that item on an agenda. And then we also have social media accounts of Facebook and Twitter. And so we post that on there as well. So short of, I'm not sure what else we could do, but several of those things are above and beyond what the state requirements are for notification. And we always get the complaint that somebody didn't know about the meeting.
Right. But I just wanted you to explain to the
Sure.
folks that are listening and those that might catch this later, what exactly, it sounds to me like following the Planning and Zoning Commission on Twitter and Facebook and whatever would be a really good thing for those that have social media out there across all of our neighborhoods. Keep up with what's going on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I see that Ms. Borland has joined us. Ms. Borland, you asked to speak. I know you might have missed part of the meeting, but did you wish to make a comment at this time?
Well, I just would like to reiterate what I said at the City County Planning meeting about the change in zoning. This is a wonderful neighborhood. People across Bowling Green enjoy driving down Covington. And I just feel that allowing more commercial property is going to be like the tip of the iceberg, and it may continue from there. Even if it doesn't, I would like to state that I want it to remain zoned residential. I hope Speedway can change their plan. I know they want a new store, put in a new store, but leave that property zoned residential. That's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borland. Appreciate it. Were there any other comments or questions? Dana?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Peterson, I have a couple of questions for you based on my reading of the record. So when I look at the future land use map, do I read it correctly that it is zoned for that single family lot to remain low density residential?
So yes, the future land use designation for that lot was low density residential.
Okay, thank you. Also, the parking spots that they're looking to put on that lot, are those required, or do they have to have those parking spots in order to, fulfill a zoning requirement or a other type of requirement?
No. So based on our zoning ordinance requirement for parking, they would only be required 9 spaces, and they are showing 23 spaces. So they could reduce the number of parking spaces that they have planned.
Okay. And let's just say hypothetically, instead of rezoning, would it be possible if they had chosen this option to have kept that zoning residential and then requested a 0 variance, removed those parking spots, and been able to expand their new gas station, but just keep everything there on that existing footprint, commercial footprint?
That is correct. They would have been able to had the ability to ask for a variance, but I will say typically you're trained in planning that variances are for unique circumstances, and you're not supposed to ask for one unless you absolutely have to or have a unique circumstance. But yes, that would have been an option.
Thank you. I think, when I'm looking at this future land use map and our comprehensive plan, and knowing that our comprehensive plan is built with the values and the vision, with lots of our community coming together to talk about, here's how we want our city to grow. Here's the parts of our city that we want to protect. Here's the parts where we see that there's growth of certain industries that are fit in these particular ways. And I think it's really important that we, looking at this document, are making decisions after all that community input, that we are for honoring those this document that we all came together to create, saying here's the principles and values and the vision that should guide our growth. And for me, I wish we would have found a way to keep this property during the planning and zoning process light residential, because I do think this hard line here, the Scottsville Road, separating it from the neighborhood, is incredibly important for us to hold and to protect this neighborhood that is so historic and so beautiful, and allows all kinds of kids and grandparents and folks of all ages to be right in the heart of our city and to have the park right across the street. It's just such a beautiful place that I think, oh man, we've got to protect our neighborhoods like this as we grow. And I hope that we continue to do so, and I'll be voting to do so. Mayor, I will need to explain my vote. And so should I do that before we vote, after everyone talks, or do I do that when I vote?
You can do it now.
Well, I think some other people had some things to ask, so I'll do it when everyone else is finished.
If you've already made up your mind, let's go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I got something else to add if I could.
Sure.
Mr. Sweet, this is for Mr. Sweet. To Dana's point here, is it possible for you to put the trees on that lot and put the fence on that lot and not do another thing to that lot and therefore avoid rezoning at all?
We could, but it would make for an awkward situation as we start to do this. And part of that is we're going to consolidate these properties. And so now we get into an undesirable situation where we have a split zone property, one of which severely says, no way, you cannot do any kind of commercial use on this. And then we go to get whatever financing, and we go to get insurance, and now all of a sudden it's a much bigger deal. On top of that, I don't think Mr. Peterson and his folks at CCPC would agree that a split zoning would be the best option for this property.
Mm-hmm.
As we start to go through this and formulate it, I understand about protecting the neighborhood. We feel we are protecting the neighborhood with a development plan that's showing what we're looking to do. That development plan will stay a development plan. We have to meet that plan. We have conditions that we have agreed to in our rezoning that protects that lot as well. We've also, I believe we've gone above and beyond what we've been asked to do by adding the fence, by adding some additional screening and protections. We feel that this is a good compromise for our team. The additional parking spaces, we understand that there's some concern with that. Our problem that we have at this site now, and I think a majority of folks would agree, that site gets very congested. And there's not enough parking on that lot for the customers that we utilize it. There's not enough parking for our employees that we have in our store to utilize that. Building itself, it's around the same size. So we're getting a little bit bigger with the canopy. That is so we can address those customers that are coming in that are stacking on our site waiting for pumps to open. And we're also adding additional parking, not only for our customers, but for our employees. So they have a place to park and they're not taking up either spots on the street down Covington, or they're parking, on site and taking up spots for our customers. So, we feel that the plan that we have today is a good compromise. It's an older site, as you all know. It's been part of the neighborhood for a number of years, and we do feel that we're providing those protections that we may need, that could be problematic, or that the neighbor could perceive to be problematic. We feel that we're doing that.
Thank you.
Dana?
Mr. Sweet, what city were you from? Again, I forgot if you mentioned it.
I work out of Cincinnati, but I live in Northern Kentucky.
Okay. Well, the reason why, I understand why you have your sort of development hat on, that's the purpose of, why you're here, what you're representing. But the decision that we make tonight goes beyond just this decision, because the way it works is that when we push this zoning back towards the neighborhood, then that makes the neighbor next to it adjacent to a commercial lot, and then that becomes compatible, and then the next one comes compatible, and you're pushing back the line with your proposal toward the neighborhood. So I understand that you, looking at your singular incident, might see this a good option. Based on sort of how planning and zoning has worked historically in Bowling Green and what could happen in terms of dominoes falling in the future, is that this remaining this hard line as it is on Scottsville Road and keeping that light residential has the opposite domino effect of literally changing the future of this neighborhood by keeping this hard line where it is now. And that's why it's such, people are fighting so hard for it, because it really does make an impact for everything in the future beyond.
And don't get me wrong, we do agree with that to a point, and we've worked with CCPC a number of times, and we realize that if somebody were to come in, let's say next to us, and say, I want to file for a zone change to a commercial use or to a more intense residential use, they would have to, I believe, amend the comprehensive plan in order to be consistent with those requirements. And then Planning Commission would have to vote on that, and then the city commissioners would then take that recommendation, whether they agree or they don't. Again, looking at this, we agree that yes, this is squirrely, and I do agree that this could go either way. As a planner, I understand that. However, looking at this thing as a whole, I think these cases need to be based on their own merit, and whether that does fit into the neighborhood or it doesn't. And what we're proposing here is to protect the neighborhood by adding that 50-foot buffer, 49-foot buffer in the back to add that additional.
Just to clarify, my decision is being made on the record at the public hearing and no other data beyond that. You had just mentioned a new argument related to planning and zoning principles and who would agree and who wouldn't and why. And so I was just responding to that new argument you had proposed.
Thank you.
But I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead, Joe.
I think all of us would have to agree the fact of the property line being where it is now, taking in the house that's behind the present property, means that there is an itching toward the next property line. And we, as Dana just said, we have to look at the total picture as elected officials as to whether or not we want that back line to continue going in that direction. And that's the problem that Joe Denton has said in here tonight. I have a problem with that line where it's at. Not even considering it going further. And my decision is going to be based on where the property line is at now. What we're going to do to Covington Street here at this entrance. I have a problem with that. Vote is, as the mayor asked Dana, my vote is going to be a negative vote. And it has nothing to do with our planning and zoning staff in any way. I thank the world of Ben Peterson professionally as a personal friend, but he knows that this decision is the city commission of the city of Bowling Green, not only tonight, but some city commission in the future, I hope, would look at this property line as we see it here and say, no more going back into this neighborhood.
Mr. Cron, I'm going to recognize you. You had your hand up as the applicant. So your application is on file as part of the record. Did you have something I needed to address?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. No, thank you. I appreciate your time tonight, and reiterate some of the comments Mr. Sweet has already made. I'm an alumni of Western Kentucky University, go Hilltoppers, and I'm a Speedway project manager as well. I think Mr. Sweet has explained that keep that buffer there between our property and the next residential property. And it was also touched on, there are some other safeguards in place that can protect next residential property. I understand commercial development to go into the Covington neighborhood. But I think it was touched on briefly that there are some other safeguards in place that make it difficult for that to happen. One of which was amendment to the, and to reiterate on that, I think our lot, Speedway lot there is a little bit different. It's the store there is over 30 years old. And the improvements that we're looking at making, consolidating the access drives, adding sidewalks, there are improvements to that intersection for a safer condition for pedestrians as well as vehicular traffic, aligning with the bank across the street of Covington. There are improvements to that area and the neighborhood. In order to accomplish that, it's my opinion, we simply need that space in order to shift those access drives and building, applying with the setbacks and so forth to make those improvements. So we feel that our plan, the comprehensive plan, and would like you to consider approval for those improvements for the site.
Thank you. Joe, did you have a question again?
Sir, just one question, Mayor, and I'll be through. I hear you, and I am concerned about your ingress and egress here on Covington, and it's lined up with the bank across the street. What difference does it make? Traffic can't get out at either place. I mean, what advantage is it of you telling me it's lining up with the bank across the street? Bank people can't get out. Your people can't get out. The bank people have to turn right if they get out at all because they can't turn left back towards Scottsville Road. Your people have to turn right on Covington because they can't come out and across on Covington to turn left to go back down Covington. So help me out, Ben. I may be getting confused.
I think the advantage here is there's currently 2 accesses on that Speedway property as it is now. To concerns with traffic, trying to get out with those 2 accesses so close. By this new plan, consolidating those to 1 access point across the street, safer condition for traffic. If they were misaligned with the bank across the street, cars turning, unsafe movement.
Well, I think you're still going to have that even with this new design. But anyhow, I'm through, Mayor.
Any other comments or questions?
I'm going to chime in here and say why I feel compelled to be a yes vote. And I've said this many times. First of all, they already own the property, and I would love to see them upfit it with the fence and the trees and everything else. Chances are they may not do that if the zoning doesn't go through, and then you will have speedway into your neighborhood, for one. The second is we as a board, on the mayor's recommendation and the county judge recommendation, appoint planning and zoning commissioners. They do the work. The staff does the work. They do a lot of work leading up to these recommendations. And we had all city zoning commissioners and all county zoning commissioners come to an agreement based on the final presentation and concessions from this group. I don't not consider exactly what Dana's saying, because you're going to have another property that's going to be right next to it if it passes, but then you've got to go through a whole other proposition. And I don't know that I'd be a commissioner in 10 years from now or 20, I doubt it. Today, I would certainly be a hard no vote on that. Right now they own the property, the house is torn down. To leave it like it is would be a disservice to this neighborhood, in my opinion. Putting the buffer in, building the trees, having the fence. I prefer there was no parking back there. That would be a concession that I would hope that you would consider, that you would move your parking away from the backside of your building and not where the neighborhood is and over onto your new property where the car lot is. I personally have come across Small House because I live just down the road here on Highland, and most of the time I go left to go downtown, and you're supposed to get in the left lane and then go over, and people just trying to get into that speedway right there. There's a lot of hazards and wrecks there. It is. I'd love to see the improvement and alignments for the safety factors getting in and out of there, both on Broadway and Covington, because it's dangerous. I do it about 4 times a day, probably. So those are the concerns and why I want to be for it. For the improvement on the property that is now a vacant lot, which is an eyesore, and some green space. And then the alignment for the safeties. And then finally, the most important for me is if we don't like the work that our planning commission does and our volunteers basically that work on that commission, these are citizen volunteers. If we don't like their work, then we need to replace them. But I think that they have a lot of integrity. I know each and every one of them. And I think we do a really good job vetting and placing the right people in those positions. So thank you.
Any other comments? Dana?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to explain my vote. But before I do that, I want to make it clear that the Planning and Zoning Commission, it was not a unanimous vote. So this is not a statement about somehow saying I don't like the work that the Planning and Zoning Commission does. I'm so grateful for all of our community volunteers who serve, especially on that committee. That is so much time that they spend on behalf of our community. So I think it's just really important to state that, we were elected to use our brains and to think through and to, there's a reason why it doesn't end with the Planning and Zoning Commission, that it also then comes to us. Our community also wants us to look at the facts of the record and make a decision. And so that's what I'm doing, which is in agreement with several votes on the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I will be voting to deny the proposed zoning amendment based on the testimony and documents presented in the public hearing of the Planning and Zoning Commission on September 17th, 2020, and the proposed zoning map amendment, because it is not consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its noncompliance with the objective and action items presented in the staff report. The proposal to rezone light industrial to highway business is not compatible with the area and therefore does not comply with LU-1 or LU-1.1.3. The proposal does not comply with LU-2.1.4, PR-1.7, or NCR-1.1.6, as the applicant does not address the existing trees located on the property, which are hundreds of years old. This proposal does not comply with LU-2. The proposal is a high quality development. However, being that they tore down a historic single-family home, the design standards are clearly not tailored to preserve the character of the area as required by LU-2. The proposal does not protect the nearby neighborhoods and therefore does not comply with LU-2.5. The proposed redevelopment expansion of the existing use into a residential area will result in infill development that is not compatible with the surrounding area. Therefore, the proposal does not comply with LU-2.5.2. Tearing down a beautiful neighborhood will not help to revitalize it. Therefore, the proposed redevelopment and expansion of the existing use does not comply with LU-2.5.3. And finally, proposal to rezone from residential to highway residential to highway business does not comply with HN-1 and HN-1.3 because the proposal is not suitable infill project for this neighborhood, nor will it maintain or improve the existing character on Covington nor strengthen the nearby neighborhoods. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is not in agreement with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan. And further, I request that the record of my vote include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at the public hearing on September 17th, 2020. Thank you.
I want to point out one thing, Dana. I didn't mean to insinuate whatsoever that you weren't appreciative of the zoning people. The 4 city appointees were all yeses. The 4 county appointees were all yeses. The 3 no votes were from Alberton, Woodburn, and Smiths Grove. So communities outside of Bowling Green, Warren, well, they're in Warren County technically, but communities outside of Bowling Green. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Bruce, you're muted.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cron, did you have your hand up and I missed it? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Thank you. To also add to the comments earlier, we talked a lot about the site and the property, but also wanted to mention the improvements to the building itself aesthetically. It would be a new building as well, entire new building and facility, as well as new fuel tanks. So an entire brand new facility that I wanted to just mention as well in this proposed plan. Also, the comments made earlier by Ms. Brown, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the historic district is farther down Covington, that one residential lot was not a historic house. I just wanted to make a comment about that. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll be calling the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
No.
Denning,
Oh,
Wilkerson is yes. There's not a unanimous vote for either side, so it does not pass at this time. This is the first reading, which has no meaning. However, we must address it from the standpoint that now you have to have a denial motion and second based on the information that you have. Would there be anybody willing to make that motion to deny the zoning?
If that is necessary, I'm happy to do that.
All right, then it will be based on all the comments that you made previously, so you don't have to repeat them since you just went over that long list. If that's acceptable with you.
Is there anything I need to say, or is this good enough?
You need to move to deny the motion based on your comments that you just stated in your vote.
Okay, I move to deny the proposed zoning amendment map, or a zoning amendment, based on my previous comments.
Is there a second?
Click an opinion somewhere.
Beg your pardon?
Click an opinion somewhere, an ink pen.
Are you seconding the motion, Joe? Excuse me?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. The motion is second then to deny based on the listing that Dana mentioned earlier. So now a yes vote would be to deny the motion. And so we'll call the roll. Again, a yes vote is to deny the rezoning at this point. Perigin,
No.
Beasley Brown,
Sorry, could you just restate it one more time to make sure I fully understand what yes means and what no means? I apologize.
yes means to deny the motion to rezone, or to deny the recommendation to rezone, excuse me.
So if I want to deny the
You'll want to
rezoning, I
vote
would vote. What would I vote?
If you want to be consistent with your previous vote, this time you vote yes.
Yes.
Denning
Yes.
and Wilkerson is no. The matter is not resolved. It is not passed zoning nor denied zoning. It will come up for a second and binding vote at the next meeting. Mr. Cron and Mr. Sweet, you're welcome to join us again. Ms. Borland, thank you for coming in as well, but that's the end of the matter for this meeting tonight. Next is Municipal Order 2020-179, Municipal Order approving Job Development Incentive Program Employee Withholdings Credit Agreement with Nova Steel USA Incorporated. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Mizel. You're on mute, Jeff.
Sorry, I'd like to hand this one off to Katie Shallerward, our CFO and Job Development Incentive Manager.
Good evening, everyone. This is just recently announced, just a few weeks ago, where Nova Steel USA has planned to locate their facility here in the Kentucky Trans Park. So this project was brought before the JDIP committee in October. And the recommendation that came from that committee is to support this JDIP agreement. It would create 110 new jobs with a capital investment estimated at $70 million. The Kentucky Business Investment Program through the state requires a 1% match from the local community. And so the city's total 1% withholding credit to the company is estimated to be worth approximately $425,000 over the 10-year period of the credit provided.
Are there any comments or questions? Dana?
I just want to thank the chamber and everybody on our staff who's just been working so hard and my cat would also like to thank you all just for everything that we have. All these projects coming in during this time is just really a testament to everyone's hard work. So just thank you all so much. I'm really proud to be a part of your team.
Any other comments? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning,
Yes.
and Wilkerson is yes. Next is Municipal Order 2020-180, Municipal Order approving a Job Development Incentive Program Employee Withholdings Credit Agreement with DG Fresh Distribution TX LLC. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Ms. Shallerward.
Yeah, again, this was a project that was announced this summer. So it was presented by the chamber to the Job Development Incentive Program Committee in June. It is a new facility that would also locate in the Kentucky Trans Park. The city's 1% credit for 65 new jobs be created and a capital investment of $26 million. The city's 1% withholdings credit to the company over the 10-year period would be approximately $280,000.
Any comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning,
Yes.
Wilkerson is yes. Next is Municipal Order 2020-181, Municipal Order approving payment in lieu of taxes agreement among the City of Bowling Green, the County of Warren, Board of Education of Warren County, and DG Fresh Distribution TX LLC related to the construction and installation of industrial facility in the city of Bowling Green. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin.
Yes, Mayor, the county is going to sponsor an industrial revenue bond for DG Fresh Distribution to do their project. With the industrial revenue bond, that takes them off the tax roll, but they have agreed to do an in lieu of tax agreement, which they are pledging. We're going to give them the first 10 years at 50% abatement, and then the next 10 years will be at a 25% abatement. Hillary worked on this with the chamber and can answer any detailed questions you might have.
Any comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Denning. Wilkerson is yes. Next is the first reading of ordinance BG 2020-37. Ordinance annexing property by consent. Ordinance annexing a total of approximately 6.604 acres of property located at 0 Morgantown Road, with property presently owned by Lost River Holdings LLC, with said territory being contiguous to existing city limits, and further approving an associated economic development annexation incentive agreement. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Mizel.
This is in our targeted annexation area, and Brent Childers is here with us tonight. He worked on this job, and I'm going to hand it to Brent to kind of give you the details. 6 acres on Morgantown Road. Brent?
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. So as described in your packet, it's about a 6-acre lot. It's a vacant lot on Morgantown Road, the same side of the road as Lambton Park, near the Walmart there on Morgantown Road. The owners have acquired the property, are in the process of clearing the property, and then we'll be seeking rezoning for a new development to go in there. They've contacted us about annexation. We worked through that process. And now before you to present an annexation as part of our target area annexation policy. So that's before you tonight, and I'll entertain any questions that you might have.
Any comments or questions?
Yeah, what type of development, Brent?
My understanding, it'll have a mixed development, commercial in the front, and then some residential on the back part of the property. Is my understanding of what they're looking at.
So individual residence or multifamily, or?
Probably more multifamily. I think it'll stay as either one lot or maybe two lots. That'll have to come through the zoning process to where they work all that out. But my understanding is commercial in the front and residential in the back.
Thank you.
The individual that are of this property, I know Lost River Holdings LLC is the corporate. Who are the individuals who are a part of that corporation?
It's a combination. There's several partners. They own several other commercial establishments, more convenience stores here locally. I can't recall their names right offhand, but Lost River Holdings LLC is the property owner of the property.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else. I'll call the roll. Perigin.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Denning.
Yes.
Wilkerson is yes. Second binding vote will be at our next meeting. Next is Municipal Order 2020-182. Municipal Order authorizing and approving an updated maintenance and traffic contract with the Commonwealth of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Mizel.
Back in February at one of our meetings, we accepted a grant, alternative program grant for $846,000 to rehab the sidewalks along the state roads coming into the city. And we looked and noticed that we had a 1985 agreement in place with them that needed some updates. So Greg has worked with them. There was some ambiguous language related to who was responsible for what.
No,
So
there was no ambiguous language, Greg.
Yeah.
Y'all just straightening it out for them.
It as you know, we've had some, not that the state's a good partner, but we have had some questions on who's responsible for what sidewalk along Campbell Lane and things like that. So we're cleaning all that up with this agreement so that we can get started on this project going forward. Basically, all of the sidewalks have been identified that need repair, and Public Works has been out and identified those. And so after this project is complete, though, the city is going to agree to provide maintenance for all these sidewalks and along the state routes, and keeping in with this revised agreement that's before you tonight. Along with that, though, any other traffic signal maintenance and ice removal, maintenance of the drainage infrastructure, all that will still be the state's responsibility. All we're doing is taking on the responsibility of maintenance for these, hopefully, mostly new sidewalks that we're going to build with this $846,000. I've got Greg here with us tonight, and he can answer any questions you might have about this agreement that's before you. But this is something we felt like we needed to get done and nailed down before we get into the project.
Joe, did you have a question?
Greg, anything?
Yes, sir, Your Honor. I can remember a few years ago, concerned citizen that I called the State Highway Department office and talked with the head engineer there at that time about helping me and the city of Bowling Green on a sidewalk. Well, I was told by that individual, sorry, can't help you. It's your problem. I am not going to call any names or anything because I'm not that type person. But that person at the State Highway Department at that time is here in our engineering department right now.
We're just lucky that guy's gone, Joe. We're lucky he's gone.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Joe, you've heard the phrase only Nixon could go to China. This is only Meredith could get this done, where we ended up with $800,000 out of it.
Yeah, I'm glad he did. I mean, I took all that abuse, but it looked like it worked out.
Dana, did you have a question?
Yes, I know when I'm talking to our community, it sometimes gets confusing about what is a city maintained road and what's a state maintained road, even though it's inside the city limits. So could you just give some examples of some of our state roads inside the city limits, and then maybe some of the spots where we know that maybe there's some people, some of our community members who are on a fixed income and who do use our sidewalks to get to the grocery or to a senior citizens community center or something like that, where you see where there'll be a really important benefit in terms of getting this agreement from the state to make sure we can get all these sidewalks repaired and updated and safe for folks to travel on.
Sure. Yeah. Generally, the distinction on who owns or who is responsible for the maintenance of a highway is if it has a number on it. So Scottsville Road, US 231, Morgantown Road on the other end, US 231. So if a road has a sign with a number on it, generally that's a state road. If not, it's a city road. So in terms of locations, there's been a lot of different, I mentioned it in the memo, there's been a lot of deferred maintenance over time. So there's a lot of sidewalks that are in poor condition that are fronting on state roads. Our goal, and I hope it's as successful as I think it will be, is to be able to address those spots that are in places where, somebody in a wheelchair, somebody that's less able-bodied than we are going to see benefits from this. Again, it's for the whole city, and to try to call out one spot would be difficult to do. There's several spots that we're going to try to make better. So.
Well, I'm really excited about this. I do talk to community members, and they have, told me about different parts in our city that is hard for them to just get to where they need to go to survive. And so I'm just so grateful that even in these small things that you all go above and beyond. So thank you so much.
Are there any other comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Lee Brown,
Yes.
Denning. Wilkerson is yes. Next is first reading of ordinance BG 2020-38, ordinance amending code of ordinances, ordinance amending chapter 15 business and general regulations of the City of Bowling Green Code of Ordinances related to administrative changes and immobilization devices in private parking lots. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Mizel.
Mayor, it's been brought to our attention that there are now some, what they call booting companies working in Bowling Green. Instead of towing a car, they would put a device on a car to basically lock it up until, well, because it's parked in a zone or a place that it's not supposed to be parked at. So I'd like to thank Deputy Chief Brian Harrell for bringing this to our attention, that felt like we needed to have some regulation of these, just like we did with towing years ago, some towing companies, where we have a level playing field and the rules are consistent. So I asked our City Attorney Hillary Hightower to work with Deputy Chief Harrell on this, along with Ashley Jackson as well. And we've come up with these amendments to Chapter 15. And I'd like to turn it over to Hillary to give you a brief overview of what we put in Chapter 15, some of the changes to allow for the booting and how we're going to monitor and regulate the booting.
Thank you, Jeff. Ashley and Brian Harrell and I met. We pulled several ordinances. Booting is new to the city here. I think a lot of other cities actually have companies that do this. And as an alternative to towing, it does have some positive aspects. You're less likely to have your car damaged if it's booted properly. It's much easier to get your car released than to go to a storage yard. So from that aspect, we feel like this could be a positive thing for people to be booted rather than towed. At the same time, we want to make sure that we are regulating. We've had some incidents where boots, for example, were placed on the passenger side. The vehicle owners aren't aware of it, try to drive away, damage their car. So we pulled ordinances from a number of cities and mirrored it with our towing ordinance so that the requirements are very similar. The parking lots have to have a sign that explains that the car could be towed or booted, provides a phone number to call a company if the vehicle is booted. We've basically installed immobilization companies, booting companies throughout our towing ordinance, but then we also added some specific requirements for booting. For example, that they boot on the driver's side so that the driver sees the boot rather than if they miss it and damage their car, that they're required to put a notice on the driver's side window that tells them a number of things, including that they may damage their car if they try to drive away, that this is the number that they can call if they to remove the boot, why it was booted, what time it was booted. We've required that they have boots that are safe and in proper working condition, similar to towing, that they have the insurance they're required. We're requiring them to apply for a license so that we can monitor those companies here in Warren County. We're also requiring them to have, similar to the towing companies, 24/7 access so that the boot can be removed. We're requiring them to have employees that have an ID with them as well as a vehicle that's marked so that if they approach a person or a person approaches them, they feel safe about that they provide a receipt and have a secure payment method on site rather than copying a credit card or recording a number. So we went through all of the different ordinances and tried to put in the things that we feel like are important to address. The particular booting company that's here right now is charging $100. I did ask Deputy Chief Brian Harrell to reach out to him today to see what the basis of that cost is. It's the cost of a boot, which is fairly expensive, the cost of insuring a boot because those are damaged frequently, the cost of his payroll for his drivers, vehicles overhead, We are also, similar to towing companies, require that they provide us with proof of insurance satisfactory to the city. So I think that I've covered all of the main changes. If you have questions, we're trying to basically be sure that the booting companies are safe with the vehicles as well as with anyone that wants the boot removed, as well as being fair to private parking lot owners who have a right to have people that are parking improperly removed. And the state statute does give them the right to remove those vehicles. So I can answer any specific questions you have.
Joe, you had your hand up.
Hillary, I'm a little confused. How are we asking people that are putting the boots on cars to be a part of a police call list? I'm confused as to how this has come about.
Well, Joe, so what happened is that several people were booted on the passenger side of the vehicle and unaware of it. And so they attempted to drive away, damaged their car, and typically the booting company arrives and then there's kind of a confrontation and the police are called. It's happened multiple times. I've actually gotten calls from Ryan Burnham, Deputy Chief Harrell, and also George Glites. So that's why we're addressing it there. It's not necessarily a problem with boots in general. It's a problem with the way the company's been doing it. And I did inquire about why they were booting on the passenger side in some instances, and they indicated they boot on whichever side is the most open. So for example, if they're in a parking space and they're close on the driver's side, they were choosing the passenger side. But if you don't have a passenger, there's a good possibility you may get in your car and drive off. And although it immobilizes your car, you can move some, which then damages the car and the boot. So that's why one of the requirements we have, and a lot of other cities have, is that you have to be able to boot on the driver's side. We did not put them on the police notification list in the ordinance. The reason that the police notification is in here for towing is so that the police have a record of which storage yard the vehicle was towed to. So in case the owner can't find it. And in this case, since the vehicle does not leave the parking lot, there was no reason for the police to be notified every time a vehicle is booted. But we do want the driver to have notice that it's been booted. So we're requiring it to be on that side, as well as a notice posted on the window.
So these incidents have come about because of vehicles being parked on private lots, and the owner has called a record company.
Well, there's a new company in town, and a couple of our private parking lot owners are using the booting as opposed to towing. So they've just chosen to go this route, and they have this booting company that's coming in and booting vehicles, but because of the way they're doing it, it's causing problems. And we felt like we can't prevent them from booting vehicles similar to towing. We cannot prevent a private parking lot owner from towing a vehicle, but we can require certain signs, and we can put maximum fees in, regulate how they boot. So we're trying to make it as safe as possible and balance the interests of both the private parking lot owners and the people whose cars are being booted. We don't want their cars damaged. We don't want confrontations. We just want a safe method of preventing people from parking illegally in private parking spots.
So if a private owner, Hillary, is having this done on vehicles illegally parked on his property, can we tell him how much that operator that is working for that private property person, can we tell that operator how much he can charge Mr. DeJohn Doe?
And similar to the state statute for towing, and I believe the state would follow the same thing with booting, allows us not to regulate whether they use towing. They are allowed by state statute to tow, but it does allow cities to regulate a maximum fee and also the signage required. And the purpose of that, with towing companies for a while, they were charging exorbitant rates. If you showed up and a vehicle was on the tow truck, well, you have to give me $300. They were in the past almost extorting money from people to get the cars back. So the legislature went in and allowed us to impose maximum fees. So our towing maximum fee is $125 currently, and that was last changed in 2014. And it allows us to regulate signage and similar things, but we cannot prevent a private parking lot owner from enforcing their rights in the parking lot. So that's what we did. We sat down and looked at a lot of different ordinances and tried to pull what we felt like it was important and put it into our ordinance.
Okay. You said our recommendation fee-wise is
Our
fine.
towing is currently $125. The booting company was charging $100, so that is what we put in the ordinance, was $100. That's something that you all can recommend change if you like to. I did look at other cities, and it's kind of all over the board. There are some lower ones, there are some higher ones. That is currently what he's charging.
Hillary, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Can I ask a question?
Are you finished, Joe?
Yeah, thank you, man.
Go ahead, Sue.
I'm sorry. Get ahead of myself there. It's $125 to tow. That's the maximum. But that doesn't include the impound, right? That doesn't include what it costs to keep your car there if it stays there a week.
$125 for a tow and 24 hours. And then after that, the storage yard is also able to charge per day for storage.
Right.
That's
So a boot doesn't make you have to run around town trying to figure out where your car is. And it also doesn't, it's less cost to the citizen than actually having your car towed. But does the business owner or the parking lot owner get to choose?
Yes, they do. The private parking lot owner can choose towing or booting. It's their option.
I mean, if it's like a busy restaurant or something like that, they're going to have the car towed.
Most likely.
Because the whole idea is to get more customers into your. Okay, thank you.
Is there anything
One
else?
in 10,
Go ahead,
Mayor.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
our intent was to make this as similar to towing as possible. They have to come in and register with us, get a regulatory license, just like the towing people do. Otherwise, you're going to have this wild, wild west, and they're going to be out there charging whatever they want to charge, and we have no regulation over it. So, to be fair with the towing companies, we thought this was proper to do.
To prevent the damage, that was one of the major problems, is if we can regulate where they boot, and similar to towing, that they have to be available 24/7 and have to appear within an hour to release a boot. Those sorts of things, the same things that we mirrored the towing statute as much as possible, and then added some important additions that only apply to immobilization as opposed to towing.
Any other comments? Dana?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to thank the staff for being proactive on this issue. The fact that you all saw that, our citizens were suffering and maybe taken advantage of, and there was a problem, that you all got together and proposed a solution. I'm just really grateful for you all being proactive in this way, because it definitely sounds like something that we need to address. I just have a couple of follow-up questions. Is there a list? Because I know we have the proposed ordinance, but it's just hard to read kind of in that format. So do we have a document that just sort of lists what new regulations we're adding?
I did not create such a document. I don't know if Ashley did. There are in the requirements section particular things that only address booting, which would be G, H, and J are particular in section 15-703 requirements. Booting is installed throughout that section, but if you start at G, those four are all particular to booting. And then
105 as well.
Okay.
On
no
which-
other- I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just getting started, Mayor. Sorry. So based on just kind of your summary at the beginning, and some of the sample language that I read on a couple of other cities, since we just got this on Thursday, I've been trying to learn as much as I can about boots, which is definitely a new topic for me. And so one of the recommendations that I thought would be helpful is to have language, and the sample language I have here is that they have to, and I know we're already telling them they have to put a notice on their door, but this language is: a notice must be affixed using temporary adhesive to the driver's side window of every vehicle for which a booting device is installed, and such notice shall measure not less than 5 inches in width and 7 inches in height, and shall include the following information. And then, I know we include, what was the information that you said they have to include in our ordinance?
So we include affix a written notice to the driver's side window containing a warning that any attempt to move the vehicle may result in damage to the vehicle, the name and telephone number of the licensee responsible for removing the device, the fee established, and the time and reason the vehicle was immobilized. The only thing that I think so far you've mentioned we did not include is a particular size of sign on the driver's side window.
And do we say they have to use a temporary adhesive?
Don't believe we said that.
And then they had to put their telephone number on that already?
Yes.
Okay, so the other wording I thought would be really helpful is a reference to the wording in our ordinance that requires the company to arrive within an hour to remove the boot. We
That's
have
already
that requirement, right?
Right, we do. It's in the same place that it was before. We just added the booting to that requirement.
But we don't have that as part of what they have to put on that notice.
No, and I don't believe that that's on a towing notice either. It may be required. I don't know if it's on the sign. Let me see. But I don't think that that's required in a towing notice either. I think.
So a tow company has to bring back your car whenever you call within an hour as well, not just
Don't
to
have to
remove the boot?
get back. They have to be available at the storage yard
Oh, got
to
it.
release it. They're not required to bring back a vehicle that's been towed.
Well, of the calls I've already received on this matter, it seems like this would be very helpful for our community, that members that are facing this issue of companies not complying with this part of our ordinance, and not even being aware that they had to do that. So I think it would help if they were given that when they receive the notice that the company, per our ordinance, has to arrive within an hour. And then the last, I guess, language that other cities use on their notice on the window, it uses this language at the end: if you believe you have been booted improperly, please contact the city of Bowling Green, and then we would give them the contact number so that they would have a place to call if there has been a violation of this.
But if they own private property, they have violated that, Dana. In other words, if a vehicle is parked on a private lot, they're gonna know that in most cases.
Well, this is
Right.
so say that, so part of our ordinance that we're proposing is that if someone's going to boot you and you arrive and you see that your car is booted, we are going to require the booting company to arrive within an hour to remove it if you pay what you owe. And so then this would provide them, if this towing company said, sorry, we're not coming until tomorrow morning, and say you work third shift and you're not able to get to your job, that would be a violation of our ordinance that the booting company violated. So then there would be a number that they could call, letting us know that this company has not done what they're required to do in order to boot in our city.
typically call the police department if that happens. And then the police department is the person that has the option to cite them for this. But that's who they've been calling. They've been calling the police.
And Hillary, so let's say someone is towed illegally, or there's some other part of this ordinance that is in violation on the part of the towing company or booting company. What recourse does the citizen have if that happens?
The citizen can call the police can cite them, or they could call City Hall and report it. And then it would come to my office, and I would have the option to review their license of either a towing or booting company and determine whether it should be suspended or revoked for violations of our ordinance. I would send them notice, certified mail, and then review everything. They would have an option to talk with me about what's happened, and then I would make a determination. And then after that, if they didn't like it, they could request an informal hearing, or they could appeal then to Jeff, the city manager. So they have some options if I were to determine that their license should be suspended or revoked.
Thank you. The one last thing I guess I need more information on, or I'd like to discuss, is the maximum cap on a fee. I remember being a college student, and $100 to a college student is pretty difficult compared to someone who's got a full-time job. And because I'm assuming just the costs are a lot less to boot than to tow a vehicle, I would like to maybe know if we're using some sort of matrix, or other than just taking that company's word for it, but what can we use to decide what the max fee should be, especially since we do have cities near us like Nashville whose cap is at $50. And so if it's a difficult leap to me that Nashville would be 50 and we would be at 100.
I need to go back and look at Nashville. What I understood from both Nashville and Louisville, who is 50 also, is that those are charges that the city imposes for booting, and those cities boot vehicles that have 3 or more parking tickets in order to collect their parking fines. So that is a city charge, and it's not a for-profit charge. It's basically a way to collect their parking citations and then release the vehicle. So that 50 covers their cost. When I asked Deputy Chief Harold to speak with him this morning, he did say insurance for the boots. The boots, I think, are fairly expensive. My understanding from the last police call we had, when he was trying to collect from someone who had damaged and I think probably destroyed the boot, was a boot is about $500. And I think they're damaged a lot from people attempting to drive off. He did indicate he's charging $100 now, and that is based upon his payroll, commissions to his drivers, his insurance, the cost of his boots. But he also indicated he was providing the private property owners with a rebate, which Brian explained to him after I talked with Brian that those are illegal under our ordinance. And so Brian suggested that if you all felt like that fee was too high, we could go possibly to $90. He is going to have some increased costs based upon his requirement to now register and get a license with the city. I'm not sure what kind of insurance he has now, but that cost may increase based upon our insurance requirements. So that was the justification for his charge. And I know it's expensive for college students, and so we are trying to balance this out. But I would also say that there are signs posted, and they're very aware that they are parking in private parking lots and taking spaces that other people pay for. So there is a cost for doing that. And based upon everything I looked at, I don't feel like $100 is unreasonable, but I also think that you all can lower it if you feel like it's too high. That's a motion that could be made now and to amend the ordinance if there's an agreement that $100 is too much.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
So I guess I would like to hear from the other commissioners if they feel like any of the additional language to the sign on the window would be something that you all think would be a benefit to provide that additional information, and it requiring that the sign be a certain size, so that it's not all typed on a 8-point font business card or anything like that. Or how you all feel about the maximum cap.
I think without question, the signage should be where the driver can see it without any problem at all. Well, it's a fluorescent looking sign, whatever, as long as it can be seen. I have no problem with that. Hillary, $100 for the boot. Benefiting the city in any way, is it?
No, it doesn't benefit the city in any way at all. No, we're just trying to balance the interest of the private parking lot owners and people who are leaving their vehicles in parking lots where they're not supposed to be, but we also don't want exorbitant amounts charged, and there should be proper notice. That's the purpose of our regulation, similar to towing.
I have no problem with a person that is parked on a private parking lot. Most people know they're on a private lot. It is so set up with signage, most people know. So if wants to charge or not over $100, I don't have a whole lot of problem with it. You shouldn't have been parked there no way. And if it is the case where the individual has parked in a space that I'm getting money for, then I certainly don't care if it is $100 charge, because that car parked there at that time may have knocked me out of $300. But the calls are going to come to our police department.
They may end up coming to us. Currently, they are going to the police department because people aren't sure what to do when they run into the booting company. I think that passing this ordinance will resolve some of that because people won't drive off with the boot on the passenger side. So there won't be this confrontation. They'll see the boot, they'll contact the number, they'll get the boot removed, and there won't be any damage to a vehicle. And that's what's causing the calls to the police, is damage to vehicles based upon booting on the wrong side where the driver doesn't see it.
Where the owner has contracted with that company to do that.
Right, but the driver just doesn't see it and drives off and does damage to the vehicle. That's where the calls are coming in.
Okay.
Hillary, or Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Is it practice today when booting to put a notice on the driver's side window?
No, what they've been doing is just putting a business card under the windshield wipers, which is another problem, because if you're especially at Western, there are all kinds of things put underneath your, so
Right.
That's why we changed it to on the driver's side window, and put all those specific things on there. I did not put a size in there because I don't feel like you could fit all of those things on a tiny business card. And I also think as a driver, if you come out and see a boot and something taped to your driver's side window, you're going to associate those together, as opposed to not seeing a boot and seeing a tiny business card under your windshield. So with all the requirements on the sign, I felt like that addressed that it's going to have to be big enough along with seeing the boot. Ashley and I felt like that sufficiently addressed it, but we can change it and add additional language if you all feel like that's necessary.
I feel like the first thing that a booted car owner is going to do is call the boot company.
Well, also there will be a sign in the parking lot. We're requiring similar signage to the towing. So it's not just what's on the door. There's also has to be signs in the parking lot. So they have several different ways to contact, but this gives
Right.
them a way to both see the boot, have a notice, see a sign, and a fee limit, which were our main, and then safety. We want to make sure that a booting company employee has to ID himself, has a vehicle that's marked. I mean, you don't want some college freshman, addressing someone they don't know who it is. The receipt requires a name of the company, a phone number. So trying to address some of those college safety issues as well.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Dana?
I just need a clarification from you all. Did you all want to add the wording to the window notice that so that our citizens know that of that requirement that the company needs to arrive within an hour, and then the statement of if you believe you have been booted improperly, please contact the City of Bowling Green at whichever number we provide. Which this wording is in other cities' door notice.
I have no problem. I have no problem with the notification at all, because you could have a situation to where a person up at Western on one of the streets could be out in the cold for quite a while if there is not a notification there that when people or the booting people will be there and have a number where that company can be called. I think all the information that we could provide as help to the person that's being booted, I have no problem with.
And it is on there, the name and telephone number of the person who will remove the boot has to be posted on the door, as well as in the sign in the parking lot.
Sue or Mayor, how do you all feel about adding the wording in our ordinance that they have to arrive within an hour, and then if they believe that they're not complying with this, that the number for our city?
I'm satisfied with what staff has presented. Sue, did you have a comment?
Well, I don't know, arriving in an hour of what? Of them calling the boot company, of them putting a boot on it and you're calling the police?
Well, that's the staff already is requiring them to do that within an hour.
Yeah.
I'm not adding that language. I'm adding it to the window notice.
Sure. I'm just wondering, an hour of what incident? What triggers the clock moving?
Initial contact of the owner of the vehicle, and that's already in the ordinance. So if you look at 15703D, the actual sign that's in the parking lot requires a sign that says it has to be conspicuously located and well lit, has to give the telephone number where someone can be reached at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that the vehicle may be released in a minimum amount of time, not to exceed 1 hour from the initial contact of the owner of the vehicle.
Okay,
So
what if they call the police? What if they call the police?
If they call the police, then they don't have to be there within an hour. They have to call the company, but that's on the sign. And the sign, as I read this, the sign in the parking lot does say within an hour, as I understand.
I think the place to put that is on the sign in the parking lot, Dana, to your point, because you're going to get this little piece of paper. You're furious, right? And you're probably only going to see a phone number and call it. You're not going to read all the fine print, but I think when you have it up there in neon and it says required to be there within an hour, as you're stewing around, I mean, I don't have any problem letting people know that. I think we should, but calling the police shouldn't trigger it. And I think a lot of people are going to say, well, I called the police and they didn't come within an hour. And next thing you know, the city's on the hook for it rather than the towing company. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, see, the person is
already required by the ordinance, is that the sign in the parking lot notify the owner of all these things as far as towing. So that would apply also to booting.
And who puts those signs up? Is that up to the towing company?
I don't know I would presume that they have an agreement with the parking lot owner and who actually pays for the sign or installs it, but the parking lot owner and towing company would have to, or booting company would have to do that together.
And I'm assuming that there's regulations in that ordinance that says so many signs are required for so many parking spots, and they can't be hidden around a corner. They can't be like, you don't see them. I mean, but there's got to be language that says they got to be accessible to the car owner. Because I'm like you, Dana. I didn't have a car in college because I was too poor to have a car in college. But if I did, I couldn't pay the $100. I'd have to probably work out something with somebody. Go, I don't know. But if I did have a car that I could afford, I would be expected to be accountable for my actions with that vehicle.
So just to clarify, section B of the signage 15702, it requires notice signs at each entrance of the lot in clear, free from interference from natural or man-made objects, easily visible to a motorist seated in a motor vehicle and permanently affixed to a structure or post to prevent its unauthorized removal. It has to be 12 by 18 inches with bold lettering and have all of this information. And then it's also, it has to be conspicuously located and well lit. So that's all
So
previous.
they're more than likely gonna get that information from the sign.
I totally agree that maybe the sign would be, in terms of logistically easier. I just know that when I'm in a situation like that, where maybe I am being thrown a situation that I wasn't prepared for and I'm super stressed, the possibility of me going and finding the sign, especially if now I'm in the parking lot and it only has to be at the entrance, I may not realize that, right? Your brain sometimes is not working like that. So for me, if our goal is to communicate to the person who has been booted what the rules of the game are, I feel like having it on that piece of paper would be the best way to educate the citizen at that moment. Just because I think they may have read it when they drove in the parking lot, but maybe the reason why they drove into the parking lot and parked was because they didn't see it. I think it's more likely that they didn't see it. Especially if they were in a hurry. So I think we should assume that they did not see the sign, and maybe they'll go searching for it. But I think it's more likely that it'll be more helpful to a citizen in that situation if it's on that piece of paper on the side of their window.
What are we debating about? Is the question whether or not the sign on the car is going to have wording that says, "We will be here in 1 hour after you make contact with us"?
That's what we're debating.
Let's end the debate and just put the information on the sign. Who pays for the signage that's going to be put on the car?
I don't know the answer to that question, whether it's the company. I would say the company pays for this sign because they're going to be they're going to be affixing them to each vehicle. So it should be the booting company.
Okay.
They do it.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you helping bring the discussion to an end. So we have on the floor the changes to the ordinance as presented by staff. With any other potential comments?
Mayor, just now, what I just said of having owners.
It's on the sign.
I'm confused. I thought Joe was saying Joe, are you saying to put it on it's already on the sign in the parking lot. Are you saying to add it to the notice on the window or not?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
It's only on the sign on the entrance to the parking lot.
But the owner of the towing company can put it on their sign. They're gonna put a sign on the window anyway, right?
And I can change. Ashley and I can add that provision to the sign that goes on the vehicle, if that's what you all vote to do. That's not a problem.
It's fine with me. It's fine with me. Let's move off a square zero here.
That would mean someone's making a motion to amend to add that provision, and that's fine if someone wants to do that.
I'll make the motion to do whatever we need to do to put that signage on the window.
Yeah.
I know what the motion means, to add the additional that they are required to respond within an hour of contact with the company.
That's right. And if they don't, we'll find them.
Second.
Oh, I'll second it.
Do I hear a second? Are you seconding the motion, Dana?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so the first vote we're taking is on the motion to add additional language to the document that's attached to the driver's window, telling them that they'll be there in an hour, and if not, who to call. All in favor of the motion to amend the ordinance with that language is a yes vote at this point. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning. Didn't hear you, Joe. Did you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and Wilkerson is yes. Okay, now we're voting on the ordinance that's amending the code of ordinances that we just amended on the floor. So the vote is for the ordinance as amended. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning, and Wilkerson is yes. Second and binding vote will be at the next meeting.
Want to make
So-
sure before we move on to clarify, who are we telling them? Are we telling them to call the city police if they're not there within an hour, or are we forwarding them to City Hall? Take these complaints.
No. They are calling the operator of the towing company.
Yeah,
Tell them they
we're-
have to be there within an hour.
You
Right?
got to work with the people that are booting or towing your car first.
Okay.
They'll get to the police when they get mad enough.
Got it.
Yeah, then we'll come and take everybody, including the boots,
All right.
to jail.
Next, we're moving on. Next is the second reading of ordinance BG 2020-32, ordinance relating to classification pay schedule, ordinance amending the classification pay schedule G for general classified employees of the city of Bowling Green for fiscal year 2021. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Any further discussion on changing that one item?
Who does this individual answer to?
Tim Lancaster.
Any other questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning,
I said, yes, sir.
yes, and Wilkerson is no. That's the second and final reading, and it goes into effect at Friday. Next is ordinance BG 2020-33, ordinance rezoning real estate, ordinance rezoning a portion of attractive land containing 0.25 acres from RM4 multifamily residential to general business located at 421 Scott Way, presently owned by Miller and York LLC. Again, this is a second and binding vote from a unanimous recommendation from Planning and Zoning. Any further questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning, and Wilkerson is yes. Next is second and final reading of ordinance BG 2020-35, ordinance annexing property by consent. Ordinance annexing 298.7 acres of properties located at 0 and 344 Fred Madison Road, 0 Glasgow Road, and 1188 Mizpah Road, presently owned by the Intermodal Transportation Authority Incorporated, with said territory being contiguous to city limits. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. And again, the second final reading. Of any other comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning,
Yes,
Wilkerson is yes. Next is second final reading of ordinance BG 2020-36, ordinance naming street, ordinance approving the naming of an unnamed alley connecting Alumni Avenue and 13th Avenue between Adams Street and Kentucky Street to Bridge Alley. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Again, second binding reading. Are there any further comments or questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Denning,
Yes.
Wilkerson is yes. Last is municipal order 2020-183, municipal order approving and authorizing agreement with Raymond James Associates Incorporated to serve as financial advisor for the city of Bowling Green related to the issuance of general obligation bonds. Motion by Wilkerson, second by Perigin. Mr. Miser.
I'll hand this one off to Katie. This is in regard to the upcoming ITA bond issue. Katie?
This is a standard agreement that we would have with our financial advisor to engage Raymond James and Associates as our financial advisor. We've used them for many years. In fact, they helped us with the original bond issue for the Transpark as well as the refunding that was done in 2016. And so this is for the expansion of the Transpark bond issue that we're in the process of putting together now. You did the intent to finance, authorize that at the October meeting. So in the next, in the next few meetings, you'll see several items related to that Transpark issue, but this is specifically just to engage Raymond James and Associates as our financial advisor for this process.
Can't hear you, Mayor.
You're on mute, Mayor.
Bruce, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. No other questions? I'll call the roll. Perigin,
Yes.
Beasley Brown,
Yes.
Wilkerson is yes.
Oh,
That's
you
the
missed me. You missed me, Mayor.
I called you. I thought you said yes.
I'm
Are you a
sorry, I
yes?
didn't hear. Yeah, the answer is yes.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry.
That's the last voting item we have. Next, we have a presentation.
Mayor, can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Thank you.
Be back at 6:50.
Or I'll be back. Everybody.
Okay, we return back to open session from our break. Next, we have a presentation on our Phase 2 downtown streetscape concept plans and State Street proposed striping plan. Mr. Mazel.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We would like to continue with our downtown renovation of our streets and sidewalks, and Phase 2 was a success of Fountain Square and a couple blocks around that. Greg has been with Brent Childers as well with Vaughn Melton on design of Phase 2. So I'm going to turn over to Greg. He can introduce our guests tonight and go from there. Greg?
Thanks, Mr. City Manager. Guys, you all know why we're here. Last October, we set out on our Phase 2 of the streetscape improvements for downtown Bowling Green. We again partnered, as Jeff said, with Vaughn and Melton consulting engineers, with their sub-consultant IBI Placemaking. They have put together this conceptual drawing of what we're calling Phase 2. Again, the limits are the same as they were before. COVID has put a little bit of a damper on our project schedule, as you can imagine, just like with everything else. So we're about 5 or 6 months behind where we thought we'd be. Nonetheless, they've made great efforts to catch up and to put us back on track for what we consider a letting maybe in the spring of next year. You know, one more thing I wanted to mention before I turn it over to Bob Nunley, who's the project manager with Vaughn and Melton, is that, you know, generally in a project like this, we reach out to the public meetings. We have large gatherings where we invite people to come and look at the plans and the concepts and to make comments. On this one, Brent and I, along with the design team, decided that we'd reach out individually, invite people down to our Public Works conference room for one-on-one, you know, showings, if you will, of the plans. There were some folks that chose not to, but we had a great turnout of all those folks that were adjacent to the right-of-way improvements that were proposed to make here with Phase 2. And so with that, we're excited about what this looks like. We're excited about what's going on downtown. And we look forward to any questions that you may have. I'm going to turn it over now to Bob and let Bob and Nathan Hunter, who is with IBI Placemaking, to talk a little bit about the concept, to run through it rather quickly, and to help us answer any questions that you might have. So, Bob?
You're muted,
Bob, I
Bob.
think you're muted. You're still muted. No. There should be a little microphone on the bottom left that's clear like the rest of the icons. No.
He appears to be unmuted.
Can we have him call in on a phone?
How about now?
Nathan, do you have audio?
I heard
Yeah, I
somebody
have
say
audio,
hello.
but it
Bob's
looks
on.
like Bob's figured it out.
Go ahead, Bob.
No?
Yes, we can hear you, Bob.
Okay. Goodness. Sorry about that. First time with Lifesaver. Real quick, we are tickled to death to be involved with Phase 2 of the streetscape project. And as Greg mentioned, I think you all know the limits of the project from College Street over to State Street and 8th to 6th, basically, tying into what was done in Phase 1. Also some improvements on East Main from College over to Center and East Main from State over to Chestnut. We have IBI on our team. They're the landscape architect firm that was did the on phase one. We are also involved and currently working on the typical section design work for phase two. We've been trying to get ahead on this project. Like Greg said, we with COVID, it kind of messed up the schedule on things, but we've been diligently working to get to a point that we can have plans ready for letting in the spring. Essentially, that's the highlights of what the work we're doing as the civil firm on this project and as the lead firm on the project. I'm going to let Nathan describe the concepts, the conceptual work that they've been doing, if he could.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you all for sharing your evening with us and letting us have a chance to speak with you. I was hoping to share my screen so I can walk us through the plans. I don't know with life size if someone needs to grant me access to do that or not, or if I can just go ahead and do it.
Just do it.
All right, great. All right. Hopefully you all can see this overview of the plan that I've pulled up. This okay, great. This is an overview of downtown Bowling Green. The areas with the red outline illustrate the limits of phase two. Phase one is the colored portion of the plan around Fountain Square Park and through Capitol Alley and Heritage Trail. Essentially, this is building on the work and streetscape changes that we did to phase one and extending out on the two arms of East Main Avenue, and then also carrying those same changes that were started on College and State Street down all the way to 6th Avenue. As I walk through the individual legs of it, if anyone has any questions at the time, feel free to ask, and we'll take it from there. So this is East Main Avenue to the south of Fountain Square Park. You can see Fountain Square Park up in the upper right with the changes that were done as part of phase one. For this leg of the project, the idea is to shrink the street down to a two-lane street with parallel parking and increase the number of street trees to mimic what is going on East Main Avenue on the other side of Chestnut as it moves up the street. So I think you all can see this dashed red line kind of running parallel to the street there. That's actually the existing curb of the East Main Street. And so this graphic represents our intended changes to it. Currently, there are about 2 parallel parking spaces on the eastern side, that's page down, and 5 on the western side, page up. We're actually changing that slightly to get 4 page up and 3 parallel parkings page down. And there is currently a small alley between the law firm and the bank on the corner. They have a curb cut there that's proposed to be removed. This is probably the most dramatic change to the streetscape, and that is there's the most altering of the curb line that would go on. On the other side of the other leg of Main Street, most of the effort would be focused on the east side of East Main Avenue. That's page south, in front of the majority of the buildings that line that street. Here, we're talking walk improvements and mainly adding in planters to break up the parallel parking, define where the parallel parking occurs and add a bit of character and separation between the sidewalk and the street. On the west side, page up, there'd just be a small bits of minor repairs where either there's buckled sidewalk or where there's curb cuts or access issues that need to be addressed to become ADA compliant and to discourage improper vehicle turns. So we've rotated the page and we're starting at the top of State Street here. So to your left, page left is where Fountain Square Park would be, and East Main Avenue, that first leg that I talked about. We had started State Street's development and change to include 2 lanes of traffic and a bike lane as part of phase 1. We would carry that through on State Street. Because there is the shrinking of the road down to this profile of 2 lanes and a bike lane with occasional parallel parking, there is a bit of an adjustment that takes place to to keep the lanes in alignment for the next block and what's the ideal configuration for the block. So we do have a bit of a turn for the intersection. For the most part, parallel parking is taking place on north side of State Street. This page up, and only occasionally when a current business already has parallel parking and would like for it to remain, we're keeping on page south where you'd have to cross over the bike lane. Moving down State Street at 7th, mainly parallel parking on the north side with tree bump outs for parking definition and the parallel parking, or I'm sorry, the bike lane running on page south. And we have Circle Square Park, or Square Park. On this leg where we come to 6th Avenue. Here at East 6th Avenue, there is an adjustment to the 2 streets, the 2 lane traffic, where one would be left turn only, and we have 1 lane that continues forward. I think Greg can talk about that later on. It has to do with, I believe, restriping that's taking place that would like to take place on State Street. Moving over to College and back up to East Main. College essentially is a mirror image of what's happening on State Street, where page north is where you would find your bike lane and is where you would find most of the parallel parking. Occasionally, again, where businesses have parallel parking and we're keeping it, we're providing that where you cross over the bike lane. Where we have the current parking garage and SkyPack, there would be no improvements to the sidewalk on those sides of College Street. So this is basically an adjustment to the way that traffic flows and the profile of the street, along with improvements to the sidewalk and planting on the south side of College on these 2 blocks with the parking garage and SkyPack. The curb would remain with the intention that SkyPack has already built out that sidewalk infrastructure on that side, and that when the parking garage is faced, the development of those businesses would also be responsible for the improvement of the sidewalk and streetscape at that point. And then this is the last part of College with SkyPack and Circus Square Park, just showing the parallel parking and the bump outs for streetscape improvement. Real quickly, I'm just going to show you guys these typical sections through the different streets, College, State, and Main. to show you the character of the street from a street view perspective. The intention is to provide large shaded deciduous trees when possible, either off the back of curb or in parking bump outs. Where we have utility lines that would be running down that leg of the street, our intention is to include smaller ornamental trees, flowering trees that would not get up, essentially don't achieve a mature height that can get up into those power lines, to avoid any issues with that. Are there any questions, anything that we can go over that needs clarification?
Why have we got to have trees in all of those locations? Can we just have shrub that only come up so high rather than trees that will grow and over top of the roadway that they're on? Think about visibility.
Sure. One of the reasons that shrubs aren't typically put on heavy traffic roadways that I think at least State and College would definitely qualify for that is that they can obscure visibility of smaller objects on the sidewalk like kids or dogs, but also they take a lot more abuse from car doors opening up and people kind of cutting through, whereas a sturdy tree truck could avoid that. But the bigger issue is that trees are generally put up to provide shade for the pedestrians that are walking on the street, because it can, it helps keep the sidewalk cool. And they also, as you can see from the sections, they separate the pedestrian traffic from the roadway traffic. And so you have a bit of a barrier. Tree trunks tend to help people feel a little bit safer, that they've got substance between them and the vehicles that are driving beside them.
I'm a person of ability. I like to, trees are pretty, but when we have them that blocks the vision of traffic, then I have a problem with that, regardless of where they at or what kind of tree.
Sure. I'm sorry.
Joe, if I might, it's going to be very similar to what was designed and put in phase one. And so the trees are strategically chosen for their size, for their mature height and spread. So they're not put in places that are inappropriate, like you said, to block sight distance or to get in the way of traffic, or to be able to, fall into traffic long term. So it's also too about, and I think Nathan mentioned, coming down Main Street from the top of the hill, the view shed that you have when you leave the top of the hill up by the water tower is a lot of mature trees. Those are large trees, and they fit in really well with the landscape, with the environment that's created there. We want that landscape, that feel, to continue down closer to State Street. We think that's it's a place right now where it's surrounded by a lot of parking lots, and so not to get in the way or to take away from safety, but to help us maintain that feel coming off the hill. Does that help?
Yeah.
Greg, if I can just chime in there as well. These are all trees that are designed to have canopies that are either vase-shaped or ovate, the purpose being that they're limbed up above pedestrian height. So if you're in a vehicle or walking on the sidewalk, you should have a clear under the canopy of the tree with only the trunk being in that view shed. The other item is that to avoid any of the traffic concerns, there are site triangles that we're required to keep the trees out of at all intersections. Essentially, this means the car stopped at the intersection should have the ability to see clearly without interference from any kind of obstruction like trees for a certain distance, a certain braking distance, essentially. That's determined by, I believe, the DOT. But we make sure that those trees are kept out of those viewing triangles.
All right, we'll see.
Any other questions on this section?
Yes.
Hearing none, we'll go on to the next.
Sorry, I forgot that you probably couldn't see me because I'm just a little square since they're sharing their screen. My apologies.
Go ahead.
So I had two questions. One was if I know in the rendering that the bike lane is blue, but I wasn't sure if that's just to make it visible. Are we planning, how are we going to make that bike lane visible, or is that going to be decided later in the planning phase?
So the bike lane will have striping. It's just like it is now in phase one around State and College Street. There's the two parallel white lines with the lines in between, that kind of cross hatching that will delineate where the bike, and it'll have the bike symbols, of course. And it also, some locations, and it's not blue, some locations actually delineate it in green in places, particularly around intersections. They actually paint the road green. We haven't proposed doing that yet at this point. Maybe later on, if we get more bike lanes and we see that they're an issue, but right now it's just delineated with striping.
Yeah, this was a visual cue.
Okay. My other question is around that. Well, thank you for explaining sort of why over by the parking garage that we're not doing any improvements there, because that definitely stood out. And it stands out now just as a place that's just gravel. That just doesn't really fit with all the beautiful improvements and investment that all the businesses around it have put in. Has there been conversation, or do we think it would be helpful to do any sort of, even a landscape buffer on the curb there temporarily, or is that not really feasible or make any sense?
Answer that question, Dana. We're gonna wait on that. It'll be kind of a game time decision, probably closer to spring, to see what's going to happen there. We didn't want to call it too early before we did something, so all I can say is kind of stay tuned on that one. We're waiting on further information to make that decision.
Got it. Thank you so much. That was it.
It will look good when it's all said and done.
Any other questions on this part of it? Hearing none, do you have any comments on your striping plan, Greg, or did that come from Vaughn and Melton as well?
No, actually, that came from in-house. We worked with Vaughn and Melton on as he talked about at 6th Avenue, the left turn lane drop. And so our proposal is, now we've got a overlay project that's set for State Street that goes from 6th Avenue on down to the river. In keeping with our first two, phase one and phase two design for the streetscape projects, we're including a bike lane, which was the intention, I think, all along. As Riverfront Park, east and west develop and over time, it's essential for us to be able to get people from downtown, even from Western long-term, down to the river and back. You know, right now we've got, it's a target of opportunity that we're going to be out resurfacing and restriping the entire roadway. It's also in keeping with what the KYTC is going to do on Kentucky Street in the spring. We all know how bad a shape that pavement's in, and KYTC has also decided to do a lane diet on Kentucky Street. So there'll only be one lane going through on Kentucky with the bike lane. And so our goal here, and I can pull that up. Can you guys access that, or did you look at that? I can pull it up if we need to.
We have
But our
copies.
goal is, I'm sorry.
We have copies.
Okay. Our goal is to mimic what is going on with phase 1 and phase 2, but to do it, with less hardscape. We're going to attempt to install traffic islands at the intersections with paint. We're going to delineate parking spots, which has not been done now. But I don't know about you guys. I'm sure you
Counselor
probably have
Ford,
heard.
would you
There-
mind pulling
there
it
are a
up
lot-
on the screen?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So sorry.
It's in the fold out in your packet. It's the legal size fold out.
Yes, I'm just thinking that our the citizens who normally they would probably see it on the PowerPoint, that they can't see it, and so it might be helpful for them if we had it up on the screen.
Sure. Can you see it now?
Yes, it's up.
Yes.
Greg, go ahead and finish with your presentation. Then I have a comment or question there. I can't hear you if you're talking.
We may have lost him.
Well, I don't know if
It
he
looks like
loses
he's frozen.
anything.
I think he's frozen.
Jeff, maybe you can answer this for me while that's being worked on. It looks like, especially when you get down around State Street Church, that you may lose a couple of parking spots. And I know they're very sensitive about having sufficient parking on Sundays. And then secondly, getting on down in the 200 block of State Street, it looks like that there's no parking in front of the new houses that the people have built there. So essentially they'll have to double stack in their driveway in order to have parking. I don't know what they'd do if anybody ever came to visit them. So I would encourage you to revisit that part of it, or at least talk to those individuals to know whether or not that's works for their neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I dropped the call there. I'm back.
Okay,
you were saying parking down from 3rd Street between 3rd and 2nd, Mayor. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, the second part of it was, yes, and the first part of it was up by State Street Church, who's very sensitive in the number of spaces that they have available to them.
Right, and we're not proposing changing those spaces at all. The striping is a little, it's kind of rough right now. It's not a final product. We're going to look at, because it's a one-way street, we can make those islands a little smaller. Our goal is not to lose any parking. Yeah, we will absolutely look between 2nd and 3rd on the left side of State Street.
Right, correct.
Yes.
Not right, left.
Yeah.
Greg,
we're not, Mayor, we're not going to have any shortening of the width of the street right now. Going to remain the same without any construction whatsoever, trees, shrubs, whatever. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, we're going to keep the curb lines where they are and make adjustments with striping with the overlay project.
Okay, now, Greg, we also, and the mayor is aware of it, because me and him have been down there at the church. We need, and I know you will, being the good engineer that you are, we need to make sure that we do not create any more watershed at 4th and State Street than what is already going in right now.
Yeah. So what this project is, Joe, is just a standard mill and resurface. So they're not going to adjust grades. Just take off that, top layer, match in with the curb, and then resurface it. So it won't take any more water than it is right now.
Right. Okay. The mayor is absolutely right. We do not, under any circumstances, need to lose any spaces, parking spaces blocked. Because all of the cars that people have that go in the church has to park on both sides of State Street. Park on the right and park on the left.
Right.
One-way street, State Street.
Yes.
Mayor, can I just make one clarification? Greg can help me out here. All of the yellow hashing is already no parking zone, correct? You just marked that on the map.
Yeah, and so Chad Doty went through this pretty quickly, and I think that's a representation. There are some places that aren't exactly to standard right now, and we're going to try to add spaces where we can. As a matter of fact, there across from the barbershop at 3rd Street, we're going to try to actually add a spot for that new barbecue restaurant. A couple have 2 spots on that one side, so it's only representations, rough right now, but it's the general idea of what we're looking to do.
Greg, they're at the corner. Mary and I were down there the other day. They're at that corner where you're talking about at 2nd and State. I would appreciate it if you'd be very careful there at that corner when you talk about that space, because we had the sheriff to go over there one day that was down there at the barbershop to ask the people that are building the facility to move their vehicle because the cross traffic could not see back towards town.
So yes, and that's another benefit, if you will, of actually shrinking the road and only having 1 lane. You're going to be able to see that single lane of traffic better. You're going to have a better sight triangle to be able to see that traffic coming. Hopefully, our goal too is to reduce speed. So we're going to try. We want that lane to be a little bit more narrow. Right now, it's a racetrack. Between 6th Street and the river, there's not even a stop sign.
Yeah. You're talking about narrowing State Street?
No, just the striping will be narrow. It will appear narrower with the striping. The lane widths, you'll go from 2 lanes to 1 lane with the painting, with the parallel parking spots striped and delineated. It's going to feel like to a driver that the road is not as big as it is, or physically as it is. We do that a lot with striping. We call it traffic calming. And so that's our intent there. Also, what it helps prevent is somebody trying to cross an intersection, say, 3rd Street. We're talking about the barbershop now. If you only have 1 lane of traffic that's opposing a pedestrian crossing the street, it's a whole lot safer. We all know what happened on Gordon Avenue about 4 years ago and how bad that was due to the fact that there were 2 lanes in a single direction. The lane diet, the road diet in that case, makes it safer for pedestrians to cross the street. So there's a myriad of things that I think we're going to gain by this in terms of safety, and yet not really compromise capacity at all, because the road's it's never full. I mean, if you go down State Street, even at quitting time, there's not a lot of traffic. So that's what all went into this decision to attempt to make this change for everybody and make it better.
Yeah, but the opposite of that is the fact that you have quite a bit of traffic coming from the medical center through 3rd Street, crossing 3rd and State.
You do, and that's cross traffic, and that's true. And we hope that this makes cross traffic even safer. We hope, because they'll be able to see that single lane of traffic easier than the 2 lanes currently. They'll have a longer sight triangle.
You're confusing me when you are saying narrowing of the lane at 3rd and State. Are you saying we only going to have 1 lane going in that direction?
1 lane going from 6th Street all the way to the river until you get to 2nd, then it'll widen out and you'll have the turn lanes. You'll have the 3 full lanes down there. But yes, only a single lane on State Street from 6th all the way to 2nd.
Going to my grave quicker than I'm really confused there. I understand what you are saying about traffic calming and
So maybe you can meet with Greg and he can show you on the map a little easier in person.
Sure.
I think you're right, Mayor. I need to meet with my friend because I'm not all into that yet.
Okay.
We'll get together, Greg.
All right. And don't forget that we got a bike lane there too. We're adding the bike lane plus the buffer. So that makes a difference.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions?
On this, oh, sorry.
Yes, Dana.
So are we doing the invitations like we did for the second phase streetscape, or is this a different situation and you're going to host something down in Shake Rag to get community support, or what's the plan there?
So yeah, this is a separate project from phase 2, and we could certainly host, if we're allowed to. The resurfacing probably wouldn't happen till June, May or June of next year. So we'd have some time in the spring if we have a break from COVID. So that's a possibility.
I think getting the neighborhood's input would be really important with a big change of a narrowing of adding the bike lane and using the road diet there.
Yeah, what we might be able to do is, target that area for a mailing with, once we get a closer, more exacting diagram, what it might look like, mail to that certain area, those blocks that are affected.
I think we should because I don't think that I'm going to be so concerned about the bike lane down there as I am about the traffic lane.
Okay.
All right. Anything else then? Thank you to Bob and Nathan for showing up this evening. And I'm sure we'll have some more questions and we'll send them to Greg so you can answer them there. There were no public comments tonight. We already made the motion to have a closed session, so we'll go ahead and end this meeting. And there'll be no vote coming out. So our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Dialing out and then dialing
Yes.
back in.